Andy Johnson, Minnesota State University, back with you for part 3, in which we look at 4 basic approaches to reading instruction or to literacy instruction. But these are most associated with learning to read. First is the basal approach, or a skills-based approach, and we'll cover each one of these in a little bit more detail. But essentially, you follow the instructions designed by some publishing company. You teach a sequence, a scope and sequence of skills. Then you attend to meeting. The literature-based approach, where you use good books and you design reading instruction, literacy instruction around good, authentic texts. The language experience approach, you use children's dictated stories to learn how to read for skills instruction and even for writing instruction. And then reading workshop, where children choose the books that they wish to read. First of all, the skills-based approach, most often associated with basal instruction. This is kind of the common sense. By the way, we use research to look beyond what makes common sense. Often what makes common sense is not what makes good sense or research-based sense. This is sometimes called incorrectly a phonics approach. The emphasis is on code, to figure out the alphabetic code first, to discover the letters and their sounds, knowing that we'll focus on the meaning of what we read first. If you grew up like I did, this is the approach the Dick and Jane series took. It's a bottom-up approach where you focus on letter sounds, and then words, and then sentences, and then ideas. This idea is based on the erroneous assumption that you learn to read simply by discovering phonics. You just teach them phonics, and if kids don't know how to read, you teach them more phonics. And if they don't know how to read still, then you give them more of what is not working, more phonics instruction. This is a good example of an unbalanced approach, where you look at just the scope and sequence of skills. You follow the scope and sequence, thinking that every human being is a standardized product. Of the 10 essential elements, there's usually 2 or 3 here. The literature-based approach, this is a pretty good approach, where the whole class uses good books. Now, this could be the whole class reading one book, or small groups in book clubs, or literature circles. But again, you use real, authentic texts, real books, not these artificial bits of books that are found in basal units and instruction. A literature focus unit is a form of this where the teacher creates a whole class study based on a book, sometimes called integrated studies or thematic studies, where you look at a book, say, again, I used this analysis before, but a book about the Civil War or a book about Anne Frank's diary. You use that as a basis of reading instruction, writing instruction, but you could also study social studies and history and math. Integrated instruction, literature-based. The language experience approach. This is great for beginning readers or struggling readers, where students, individually or the whole class, tells the teacher a story, and the teacher dictates the story. You have an experience, hence the experience. The teacher dictates what the child or children say. This becomes the basis of how to read. They use children's dictated stories to practice fluency, word identification skills, grammar skills, etc. Those are the dogs barking. One of the benefits of this is that you can be assured that the words, the concepts, and the experiences are all familiar to the students. It makes learning to read easier if they're reading words that they know and about things they know about. And again, used with beginning readers or struggling older readers. And then the reading workshop, sometimes called a self-selected approach or a progressive approach. Here, children select the books that they want to read, and that is the basis of reading instruction. Think about it as reading practice versus a reading class, like choral practice or choir practice or wrestling practice or whatever. You get a lot of practice reading good books, but then you have mini lessons, skills based on what the teacher is observing in the class. The goal of it, the majority of it, is the practice reading good books that children choose, and then you give mini lessons in the context of that. This is the best approach for an inclusive classroom. This is the best way to deal with the multi-levels of readers and writers within a classroom. Within an inclusive classroom, if you have students reading 2 or 3 grades above or more, 2 or 3 or more grade levels below, this is the best way to differentiate the curriculum to meet the needs of all students. I highly recommend Reading Workshop. Children are more motivated to read because they choose the books that they want to read. All right, this is the end of part 3. The next one will look at some elements of what a balanced approach might look like.